GM. We got a new timer. What's going on? What's going on? You can hear me, but we're gonna wait for the 60 seconds rundown.
That's hilarious. Our voices are just ghostly in the background.
Oh man. If you don't wanna sneeze or drink a beer, do it off camera. GM. GM. Hot Takes Cold Wallets episode number 22. Try number 2. At least we don't need 22 tries, I guess, to get this started today. So hi everyone, I'm Nikita. Juan, how we doing?
Yeah, doing good, doing good. We're very busy, very busy couple of weeks right now. We've got a lot going on. We have Bitcoin Vegas, we have Consensus Miami coming up. We're going to a more traditional crypto, actually security conference called a Safeguard as well. It's all about trust and safety, fraud, all this other stuff. So we're going to be there in Colorado this weekend as well. So yeah, lots of traveling. Hacks also never sleep. There's some interesting stuff for us to talk about today. Um, and yeah, besides that, just feeling pretty good. Just it's still nearly negative degrees in Toronto. So I'm just where's spring is my question.
Juan, how
Yeah,
about you? It looks like a bit more summery at your place at least.
yeah. I mean, it's autumn here in Argentina, so right now it's like pretty good weather in here. Not rain at all. Yeah, enjoying, I would say, everything so far. But yeah, as Sigina mentioned, pretty busy days, pretty busy weeks. I'm excited to meet a lot of person next week in Consensus Miami, and also yeah, chat about like security, everything that we are doing. Also, people to know more about like what other people are doing in the conferencing here. So what I mean is just really willing to go to this conference and see what's happening out there apart from the different hacks that we have been speaking over the last few weeks. Like what I want to know what's up there that might be not related to different hacks on different DeFi dramas that we have seen over the last couple of weeks. So yeah, excited, and also as mentioned, pretty good weather here, so can't complain.
We also got a special guest here tonight. We got Justin, aka Nix.eth. Hi, Justin.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time. We're going to talk about a lot about AI making building faster, making security cheaper or not, who knows, and like, making scams easier to deploy and stuff like that. So it's going to be an interesting episode, especially if you have been dipping a toe into AI and all of the different models and have been trying different things out. We got Justin here tonight. He's like an expert on the topic. He also like tweets very important insights and stuff that I find always interesting to read. So it's a very good episode. I'm gonna assume we're gonna get into very important topics tonight. Nikita, can you fill us in about the Bitcoin Las Vegas conference? I think you weren't on site, but do you have any updates from the teams where they said like, are there any like general topics going around? Is there any common
Energy
sense that's been
wise,
found?
I think energy wise things are getting much better. They were also conferences were more about like surviving earlier in the year, but they're saying there's a lot more energy back, a lot more just people on the floor, interesting people to meet. So I think just as like I think we're getting to the spot where like people have either weathered the storm or there's new people coming into the space, and so we're starting to see a bit of a revival, and I'm happy about that. I think the people that have stuck around are now solidified in where they are, and like the companies are saying like, hey, now we're down to just like the builders that are here to stay, and they'll just focus on that instead of the whatever was happening the last 3 months. And yeah, that's kind of energy now. It's much more like it's swinging into the positive.
We talked a lot about common threats that we see on conferences, like QR code scanning, impersonators, and fake teams and stuff like that. We don't want to repeat all that in this episode because we got other things to talk about. I just have one question, because recently we've seen the Telegram takeovers from a lot of like higher value people, VCs and all that. And I myself asked me the question, like, is a follow-up Telegram message after a conference, is that actually getting like an attack vector now?
Yeah, no, we have actually been seeing this. I've personally seen it in my Telegram messages, and I think scammers are they catch on to patterns, right? And so what they're noticing is that, okay, conference is over, you're going to get a wave of messages to you saying like, hey, we just met at, EthCC, or we just met at Bitcoin Vegas, and so on. And you just expect to receive that from like 1 million people. You don't, that's just kind of the standard now. We've had some people receive that even like have not gone to the conferences. So it is they're like kind of just spray and praying. They're kind of hoping that, I don't think they've gone as far as to actually track who was there. I think that probably is possible, especially if you announce and you have your presence online. So maybe that's like level 2 of what they will get to. Right now, they're just like, oh, well, your company often has conference presence, so we'll just blast out everybody that we know works there. I honestly wonder what kind of CRM the scammers are using, because they're clearly getting better at at better targeting people. So maybe they can make money off of that, just selling to those sales orgs instead.
Justin, have you heard any about that? Like, have you received any special Telegram messages lately?
I definitely get a lot, yeah, but I think it's, Nikita kind of said spray and pray. I think that was more of like the old model, and now with AI and LLMs, like I think it's just becoming more sophisticated, right? Because they can, instead of just, I'm going to send the same message to 1,000 people, it's like, oh, I know that this guy's attached to this X, so I'll just go scan it real quick, like the LLM, and be like an actual intro that's like, hey, I saw your tweet, or hey, this is like, I'm seeing it just get more sophisticated.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very.
We also talked about like you could just like feed it the whole chat history with the contact if you have it. Like if you have access to that Telegram, you could just like go and import the history that you had with Nikita or someone else and say like, hey, is there any common thread that we have been talking about? And then we're gonna spin up a story to make it seem like more believable, which is very interesting. So AI does speed up things, Justin. It doesn't just build up like the scams faster. It also builds out tools faster, which is a good thing and not so good thing. We're going to talk about that like later in the episode. But I'm thinking that you're sitting like in a very interesting intersection, because you are a dev, you are an artist. How did you end up being in the spot that you are in right now, Justin?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been building sort of web techs for about 25 years and got into crypto early. I think it's been like 12 years now or 13 years now. It really wasn't until Web3 came around where I felt bold enough to like bring my artist side out. So that's a relatively newer development over the last few years.
Nice.
But you're also building cool stuff, and we're gonna get into that like later on. But did the AI stuff come from your personal curiosity, or did you like see any gap that needed some kind of education or work on it, where you can just like fill the role?
Yeah, in general, like I think nobody can really ignore AI anymore, and us being, and frontier people as it is, and crypto and stuff like that, I think we were earlier to start thinking about AI. So yeah, I don't know how to answer that question. Like I think AI fills a lot of gaps, and for me personally, like as a builder, as an artist, as a dev, protocol engineer, like AI is a massive lift. But that means, this being a security show, like it's a massive lift for people that are malicious as well. Yeah.
Is there a common thread? Is there a common thread for you in these use cases of AI? Do you see like the main goal of AI, or is it like intersected into different sections wherever you want to use it in a different sector or something?
Yeah, I think it's all over, right? Like my private use of AI is, of course, as a builder, very much. I mean, it's even gotten good enough with things like smart contracts, Solidity, stuff like that. Like it's really a helpful co-pilot or partner. And then even in personal life, like I didn't use an accountant this year for my own business. For the last year, I just fed everything in AI and had it like organize all my receipts and build my spreadsheets and do all that. I thought it did a better job. Yeah. So I think it's kind of touching everywhere. And when you're somebody who's thinking about it in one area, it quickly like bleeds into all the other areas of your existence, right?
I think that's where Claude's done a really good job. It's just like they're so focused on giving it tool use capabilities, like all our slides, decks, spreadsheets you want to double check the math every once in a while just in case that I got it, understood what you're trying to do correctly. But everything presentation wise has been incredible level up. We're trying to get more and more now into our development workflow too, where it's like not just that, like, okay, like the devs are using AI, that's already happening, but it's like reviewing the PRs, it's finding bugs, and if it finds like a very low threshold of issues, it can actually approve your PRs as well, which has been interesting. We combine that with some more like practical rules to limit like who can merge code into production. But like if you're making like minor changes in areas that users should be allowed to make changes in, or like the devs should be able to make changes on their own, it kind of allows them to do that.
Nikita, from your point of view, like from a company point of view, how concerned are you about like personal or brand data when you're feeding LLMs?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, there's a lot I think to talk about. The one thing is that there's what amount of data about people at your company is like useful to use for phishing or to use even just to target them. Like your Twitter profile alone is like, okay, maybe that's kind of public. But then if you find your Twitter and your LinkedIn and, turns out you have a Tumblr somewhere that, you don't tell people about. And then from there, you start scanning them and you kind of build out this picture of an individual. It's hard to tell when, like, on its own, like, what do you say this is PII? Like, what do you say is this like, maybe not? It's publicly accessible, so technically we should be able to store it without like too many issues and run operations on it. But then when you connect all those pieces together, now you have a really good picture of who a person is. And so we take a lot of care into like good careful like storage of this data. If we ever use it for like some sort of like anonymization internally, encryption of data, like all these other pieces is very important because technically all of this was found on the public internet. But when you've taken that step of tying all those pieces together in like an intelligent way, now that can be used to target somebody. It might not be like literally the address where you live, but it's all the details about your life that would make somebody else convincingly believe details about them. So now you can call them, you can reach out to them, find information about, and have like a convincing conversation that you think it's, like Justin earlier was saying, it's like somebody, they read all your tweets and so they say this is an introduction from somebody that you knew, and just to make a much more convincing fish. So definitely a concern for us in terms of like we work with a lot of customers where we both need to know as much as possible about their employees' social presence to make sure we don't have false positives and also to improve our own detections of impersonators. But also that data needs to be extremely carefully stored because any of it definitely is something that can be used for like malicious purposes.
Justin, what do you think? Would you say you trust like an LLM more with your personal data than your accountant?
I don't know. Like, I feel like I don't trust data anymore anywhere. Like, it just seems like there's compromises of data constantly. Like, I think I'm past the point of believing that nobody can get my social or address or name very, very easily because it's just been in, probably 1,000 data leaks over over decades and everything else. So like, trusting the LLM is about the same. Like, I do think there's a thing with private data. Like, I personally, like, for my own things, I do use local models for things that are more sensitive, and I try not to feed like absolutely everything off to Anthropic or OpenAI. But like most people, I mean, especially American-based people, I think that tend to think less about privacy. are just dumping basically like everything straight into cloud LLMs. I mean, I'm talking companies, but like, I work with startups, and they're just like, oh, everything's an MD, like everything, like our vision, our process, our employee data, like everything. It's like, it's all going to, OpenAI or Anthropic. And I think it's interesting. I think we're going to see some really, really interesting hacks come out of that over the coming years. Especially as we shift from like, it's no longer about data collection, right? Like for so many years, it was all about data collection. It was like, build a business on data, get proprietary data, build as much data as possible. And I think what we're seeing now is like the shift towards there's so much data, you can't use it. But now with AI, you can start to leverage that data. And that's going to be some really interesting exploits. Even though I try to keep things private, if somebody compromised OpenAI and like every one of my chats with ChatGPT was made public, I don't know. Like it'd be probably pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, some bad things might happen. Yeah,
like I would be kind of horrified. Like you've people are getting so much deeper and personal than they are with like signing up for a social network. Like you expect things to be public. You're only putting certain information in, but like people are talking about like medical stuff and like like counseling. Like marital or friend problems. Like it's going to be interesting.
I think there was like this case where Frank Degards, he vibe coded this app where you had to upload your CSV data from your credit card. And me as a German, I was like, what the hell are these people doing? They are uploading their credit card data into a vibe coded app for someone they don't really know anything about, just to get a number out where it says, hey, if you cancel this and that and this, you might save like $100 or something. But from a privacy point of view, it's very interesting because like as Germans, I think we're in a pretty good shape when it comes to data privacy. And as you said, like Justin, like I think like American people, they don't seem to think like twice about these kind of things.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way. In my last startup, we headquartered in Munich, and I learned that Germans and Europeans in general have a very different view of data privacy than Americans do. And most Americans don't really care. They don't. And I mean, Germans and Europeans, and I'm not saying this is bad or good, but like they'll like make it their life's mission to like pick apart your company over like one little thing. Like they're just super into privacy. And I mean, maybe that's positive in the coming world. Like, yeah, it's interesting for sure.
Did you a very important step coming up for sure.
Did you have to have the impression that it's like more of a hurdle to jump through? Because if you're reading stuff outside of Germany or outside of the EU, you always see these takes like EU, they are just like regulating everything and everything is complicated. Is that something you would say as well?
Extremely difficult. I would never ever base a startup in Germany again. I don't think it's geared towards startup type of companies. Some of those, I get why a lot of those rules and laws exist, even just outside of data privacy, even in things like employment rights and stuff like that. I get why they exist, and I get why like medium to large companies can comply with those. But like as a startup, like it's hard to comply with all that and jump through all that. You don't have that like environment where it's like here, like you could raise VC money, you could be sitting in San Francisco, you could vibe code out like some app that has like 10 million users and is dealing with private data without really having a problem. And you couldn't really achieve that somewhere like Germany now.
Yeah, I think like with the credit card data, you would have like a lot of trouble when you do that in Germany. Justin, is there anything that you find yourself like concerning when you see all these products integrating AI things that quickly now?
I think most integrations are positive. Like I think people need to start thinking about AI and integrating it. And like, I think there's a few ways you could approach that. Like, I do think it's concerning to see some of the vibe coded stuff kind of go viral and take off. I had one last week that I kind of picked apart, which was a bit mean of me, but it was like this vibe code product that went super viral, and it was called Sincerely. And it was like, basically, it was kind of a clever idea, but it was like just this app that plugged into your Gmail, a browser extension that would like rewrite emails for you. But instead of like making you sound smarter, they tried to make you sound like a human or like sound like a CEO or, so it was like just a basic prompt, like make some misspellings and shorten things up. And like one of the things they bragged about was like, you can import your Anthropic key directly and like nothing ever goes to our servers. And like, I went and peeked at the extension code and saw like that wasn't true. Like even the API keys you give it are going off to, the person who vibe coded this. And I don't think it was malicious on purpose, but like you quickly get these like pots of information, which just, it goes viral, right? It's 10 million views. I don't know how many people signed up for it. I'm sure thousands and thousands of people tried it. They're all pouring like they're giving access to their Gmail, they're giving access to like their Anthropic API keys, everything all in place. And even if like the intentions weren't bad by the person that made it, you just created like this really shiny, nice thing for someone to grab a hold of. So
yeah, I think that's a really important point there, that all the vibe coded apps from the surface, they don't look vibe coded. This looks like a professional piece of software because it has all the nice design skills. And so you think this is it looks like something that's been in development for at least a year, but you can't really tell that, before, if you knew something was like a beta product, you could kind of tell just, like from the way it was shipped. But now you can skip a lot of the security steps, but still make the product look very professionally made. And so I think that is also making people not realize, because there's no longer that visual disclaimer of like, this was made last week. It looks like something that was made, by a professional company. And so that's where the virality kicks in and starts causing challenges.
Trust, right? It all comes back to trust, and like the trust contract kind of gets violated there, which is interesting to see.
Yeah.
Nikita, do you think that communities, or let's say like vibe coded startups, whatever you want to call them, they do value like the stuff that Justin did? Like, hey, I saw this, I picked this apart, I found this. Do they get like more defensive, or do they actually like value the stuff that has been found by people like Justin, for example?
Yeah, I mean, well, for that company themselves specifically, they can maybe have a bit of an allergic to reaction to it sometimes and be like, oh, like I've seen a number of companies come back with like very like snarky comments and replies, and they're like not very appreciative of this. But like, of course, I mean, they like I think the right approach there is to say like, look, this is what we're gonna do about it, and this is what we're gonna do to improve, and just focus on that. But some people also see that as like admitting guilt or something else, and they don't want to do it. Anyway, I think being like snarky about it is not a good look, and it causes further damage. You should just like accept it and improve it. What I do think where it helps is other companies look at this and they're like, well, I don't want to be that example. And I think there needs to be people that are like taking the time to pick apart some of these apps, just because like, if we pick apart just a few and show the underlying issues, it's gonna make others think a little bit more about the like, how do I like, it's like, you don't want to be like, the company that just signed a bunch of customers and then you got exposed for like a bunch of their credentials leaking, or a bunch of their some really insecure practices. So I think as long as people still take the time to do this, it's kind of good to expose these bad practices, because it does force others to think a little bit more about it.
Justin, I was gonna say, like, is your intention to raise the bar for these standards if you're doing these, or what's the thought process when you do something like that?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely to raise the bar. Like 9 times out of 10, if I find something, like I'm DMing the person about it, right, or the company about it. Like it's just not responsible to be like just to use it for engagement bait. I mean, I know those things get lots of views and it's tempting, but like it's much better just to reach out to people and be like, hey, I saw this or this. But like I think in some cases, like this one I was talking about, which was very obviously like a vibe coded 2-day thing, like I think picking it apart and putting it on the timeline and getting 1 million views on it, or a couple million views on it, is important, because out of that I got a dozen or 24 other vibe code type of startups reaching out and just being like, hey, can you take a look at my app? Hey, how do you prevent this? Like what, yeah, I built something. I'm trying to get it out there. Like, how can I make sure it's secure? Right. So I think it does click in people's heads, because on one side, if you're this new type of builder, which is this vibe coder that maybe wasn't a developer before, you're getting told by these big companies, you're getting told by Anthropic and OpenAI, like you can build anything, like just go type it in and you can build it. And they're giving you plugins to deploy it instantly and all the things to do it. So on one side, you're being told like, you can do this now, you can release it, you can have it, without really telling you what the risk is or that there is risk. So I think like, it just comes down to education, like making people aware, like, oh, I should probably have somebody look at this, or I should think about it differently.
Yeah, awareness is a good keyword because that's something that the Wasabi protocol could have used, I guess. Before we get into AI audits, Wasabi protocol was hacked for apparently like around $5 million. It's not 100% clear yet because, yeah, everything is in shambles and we're still like in the aftermath. And Francesco Andreoli, the DevRel guy from MetaMask, he shared like a nice graphic earlier where he basically says that there was an externally owned address which had the ability to grant admin rights, and that was probably compromised. And with that key, the admin rights were distributed to like a proxy contract. Justin, correct me if I'm wrong on this. And with that, they were able to then drain various funds out of the vaults the Wasabi protocol held in there. This is like, it's funny because if you have been a listener or an audience of the show, Nikita, Juan, and I, we're sitting here every week, and at least for 3 or 4, maybe 5 weeks in a row, we have been discussing like ongoing hacks in this show. And I was a bit disappointed we don't have one for this week, but here we go. We have another one. So the breakdown was great. Obviously, we shouldn't laugh about these things. Firstly, I want to discuss with you guys one thing that I find pretty interesting with the Kelp DAO. We froze funds and we decided, hey, this hack is like big enough to take action. What about the Wasabi protocol? Like, where's the line? Nikita, we talked about this before. Like, the industry maybe needs like a standard where we have to set a certain threshold in funds stolen. Where's the line where the security community or the blockchain community rallies behind and says like, hey, DeFi United, we're now saving the Wasabi protocol as well?
I think just realistically for the industry, 5 million is too low. That's just like the reality of the situation. My guess, like if we just had to like arbitrarily guess where people would take action, is something like 50 mil, like 50 mil or above, maybe a bit lower. Like 30 mil will make people start to consider, especially if like a lot of that was concentrated on like a certain network. The problem is often this all starts to like run off in different directions, and somebody can like, it's not like there's one place that can help with all the 5 mil. It's probably now, I haven't looked into how exactly the funds spread, but typically what happens in these situations is they jump all over the place, and so through different networks, and so it's really one network can handle maybe 1 mil of it, another network 500K, and then now you're really getting into low numbers where it's like for them to coordinate like a freezing and their security council attack down, it's like, each time you do this, it actually adds its own risk in some ways too, right? You don't know how these actions could even affect like other protocols that are like running, and every time you do that, it's in itself a little bit of a risky action. So like my our more arbitrary guess, I guess, would be maybe around 30 to 50 mil. Like those hacks, like people will consider acting, and anything over 100 mil, I think it's hopefully will start to become a standard to freeze funds in that case.
Justin, do you have an opinion on this? Like, where would you draw the line personally? Is there any line you would draw at all?
It's tricky, right? Like one side of me wants to say, yeah, great. If you can freeze it, why shouldn't you? The other side is like, this is crypto, and that sets a slippery precedent, because once you start freezing things in different protocols, I think the problem that you're gonna run into there is like, you've basically broadcast to the world that all the things you've been saying over the years, which is crypto can't be reversed, it's permanent, that it can be. So then like, let's say you're a local judge in a city that's working on a case, and it's like, well, now I feel like I could compel a service or a chain to freeze funds because I know they can because they've been doing it. So like now why don't I have that ability to like compel it? So I think it's a slippery slope, the freezing of stuff, especially if it's things that people wouldn't expect to be frozen. But so I don't know where I would draw the line. I think 5 million is way too small, of course. That's not much. Like that's not hard to make up that gap, the 5 million. But as you start getting bigger, because then the flip side of that is like, at what point do you completely erode people's trust in the underlying sort of ecosystem, right? Sui's been playing it differently, right? Like Sui's had a few hacks that have been smaller, and then they themselves have been backing the recovery, right? So it's like even these smaller DeFi hacks, they're like, oh, we'll cover it, which is also interesting because it's like not really freezing. It's more just like the protocol team itself the chain team itself doing it. And that also sets a kind of a weird precedence, right? Because then you're also, I feel like, kind of you're giving more confidence to users, but you're also removing risk from like teams building. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out long term.
Yeah, I think just an important part, like, is that we've seen a lot of that. We've even seen, I think, EtherFi recently contributed to some of the recovery. Of the kind of the restaking kind of hacks that have been going on and stuff, right? And their reasoning was that, like, they see it that, like, everybody needs to actually help out, because if, like, we don't help here enough, it could be like a destabilizing force across the whole ecosystem. So they're like, okay, well, we have some spare cash, we can actually, if we contribute some of that spare cash and everybody else does, so that's almost actually interesting. It's almost like a community like slush fund or something, to like help with the recoveries. But that's you're very much relying on people just being like, hey, we'll help out. But there is I think a certain sense of, like, there are hacks big enough that it's in, like, everybody's best interest to maybe even contribute some funds to help make those, like, victims, like, whole, or at least not make certain positions collapse. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and it's also interesting what Chancey mentioned, that some chains might have this approach like Sui to cover like all the different drains from their own ecosystem, because maybe, again, it's like a calculated risk and a calculated decision. It's not that they just will cover everything everywhere that they see. It's because they probably want to have like that trust in their ecosystem, trusting like people staying interchain, because the main problem that chain can have is to lose users because due to these hacks. And a user that usually goes from your ecosystem, is really hard to get them to come back unless you do like and spend a lot of marketing money on them for different reasons and for different ways to come back. So it's interesting, this approach that a chain covers for the fans on that specific chains that had like that suffered. So Jasmine, in this attention, for example, I know that Wasabi was like a trading protocol. So it's not like a DeFi protocol that was only working in like one chain, but also in multiple chains. Like, what is the current approach from these chains, right? Because we saw Arbitrum's freezing the funds because they were interchain. But what happens with all different chains? Are we going to have like different considerations? Are we going to have like different chains that are like more willing to freeze funds and other chains that isn't? So I think you mentioned, Justin, we have like this way to we understand crypto as something decentralized that can be removed, that can be changed once you do a transaction on the blockchain. But right now we may have like some statistics, and we may have some information about chains that may be more willing to change the blockchain and change on the funds freeze that aren't like not too willing to do this. So I think it's like quite interesting scenario that we weren't like a couple months ago, that puts us in a different way to approach crypto transactions, DeFi protocols, and ecosystems in general, like how they approach their own hacks on their chains. So really interesting to discuss about all of these things.
Yeah, for me, it's like a maturing process, but it's an expensive one for sure. But the industry as a whole, they kind of need to decide which way do we want to go, or do we want to keep this happening? Like it's kind of like a double-edged sword, like Justin said earlier. It's a slippery slope, really. Justin, for your part, maybe a question your way. Do you think that these like privileged admin keys, we've seen this like a lot in the past, where one address was able to like delegate access to vaults or to upgraded contracts in the past? Do you think that this is still like one of the main issues we see with these protocols? That it is really not like gated behind like a multi-sig or some system that could like prevent happening?
Yeah, I think it's just easy to overlook. And I think the vulnerability exists in a lot of teams. I certainly see it often. It's like a lot of teams are rightfully focused on like contract audits, right? So like contract audits is like one piece. It's like, we need to make sure our contract's audited and perfect. And that's a narrow piece of like the broader picture, right? Or like, if we have treasury funds, we need to make sure it's multi-sigged, right? Like make sure those treasury funds are going to multi-sig, make sure they're doing that. What you saw with Wasabi and what you've seen with others was actually the deployer address. So like for those that aren't familiar, it's like that was the account the developer used or the engineer used to deploy the contract to the blockchain. So that was the deployer address. So it's a single EOA, right? It's a single account that maintained access where it could elevate somebody to admin. So even though you've got these great multi-sigs, you've got all these great audited contracts, you've got everything going on, you've got this one address just kind of sitting out there like a backdoor key, just waiting for that one thing to be compromised. I don't think we know yet how this one was compromised. It's probably going to come down to social engineering, right? Somebody installed something or did something that was compromised. I'd bet on that if I could. So I think it just goes to like, as these teams are thinking about security, they need to have somebody who's a holistic thinker as well, right? Like somebody who's stepping back and looking at the whole forest and thinking it through. Because anybody brought in, I think even like a mid-level or maybe even a junior level type of person, like if Wasabi would have brought them in and just been like, hey, look at our entire thing, they would have been like, oh, what are these deployer keys? Who owns them? Because that's like the first thing I always ask when a team brings me on. They're like, hey, can you work on these contracts? One of the first things I'll ask is like, who owns these deployer keys? Like, where are they? Like, how are they accessed? And 9 times out of 10, it's scary, but it's like, oh, I don't know. It's probably on an old machine, or that was something another contractor did, or something like that. So like, I think they just need somebody who looks more holistically and isn't just, oh, I'm only contract security. Oh, I'm only multi-sig security. Oh, I'm only, if you're more complex, you have like oracles and stuff. People are thinking really heavily about that, but not broader. And that's how you miss these.
I think right now is a great time for like traditional security people to enter into crypto, because all the companies need help. All of them have focused on, like you said, smart contract security, maybe multi-sig, but some of them do have CISOs, that have general like kind of capabilities, but maybe many of the mid to small size teams don't really have anybody there that is has this holistic view that you were talking about. And it's interesting because like it's nothing crypto unique to crypto. You maybe need to like learn a little bit about the unique attack vectors, like what is a key, what is it. But then if you think about it similar to like maybe like a master password or something like that, then like you're already like halfway there. And then really what you need to bring in is all the understanding of like traditional OPSEC, traditional like infrastructure security that you would do for cloud security. It's all the same thing over here as well.
Could be like a workspace for someone as well. Like if someone's trying to build something, like if you want to actually help teams in the space, maybe build something like that, like with the help of AI, Justin, it might find these kind of things, right? At least you could have like a standard pattern check where you say like, hey, are your keys on a single machine? Is that machine used for anything other than your dev work, etc., etc.? That could be done by an AI with a pretty standard pattern, I guess. And I think, especially for crypto protocols and devs in crypto, they should be aware that their security game must be on a whole different level than any other dev out there, really. Because I think like devs in crypto, they have been targeted a lot. But what we have seen in the last, I would say like maybe 2 to 3 years, it has been like insane levels of targeting of these people. Okay, so we're gonna get into the AI-assisted smart contracts audits. Justin, that's basically your main driver, at least from what I've seen on your timeline lately. This is the main reason I wanted you on today. So you posted that you basically got like an AI-assisted audit system going on now. And you claim that basically you brought down the token price of a simple audit. I don't know what kind of scope that has, because I'm not a dev and I'm not like an auditor, obviously. Maybe you can touch on that in a second. But you maybe claim that you brought it down to like $100 basically in token costs. So can you take the listener maybe on the journey to what actually are you running? What are you doing? What are you trying to contribute to the system with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not a primary security person or an auditor, but audits are something that just naturally, if you're a dev in this space, like you have some exposure to it. Over the years, like I've done a lot of basically like friend audits, right? So it's like people that are just like, hey, I'm building this, especially more like indie developers, artists, because artists also build contracts and stuff and may have trouble with it. And so it started from just like something that was consuming a lot of time for me. Because like if somebody's like, hey, can you look at this contract? Like you really have to sit and think about it and work through it and kind of go through the flow. And so this was, I guess last year, like mid last year, I started thinking like, can I automate any of this, right? So it was like just trying different methods of like building out a workflow that like ran different scenarios for contracts through different models see kind of what I could catch, what I couldn't, test it against exploits that have happened in the past. And since then, it's just been something that I've been iterating on. It's not something I do like for pay, but it's something like at Aborian, working on DeFi primitives. We're of course doing a lot of contract work. Other friends, other people that have asked me, I've helped them out kind of using it. It's not something I want to like fully release because again, I don't want to like enable people too early, people with bad intentions to kind of use. But I mean, I'm happy to break down, I guess, kind of what the process is and how I think about it, if that would help you.
Yeah, I think like if you can keep it like pretty general, because like I don't think like we have many auditors in the audience, but like if someone maybe is interested in Web3 and Web3 security and they're hearing about, hey, AI can do audits, what does it actually do? Like what can you check against? How does it look like?
Yeah, well, we can say AI can do audits. It doesn't just mean in Web3. Like AI can audit software anywhere. And what we're seeing recently, like I think of the agentic kind of AI era, new security risk is sort of 3 buckets from my perspective. Like one is like agentic auditing, one is kind of like agentic like meat space social engineering, and one is like agentic on agentic. And for agentic auditing, I mean, basically what you're seeing is you're seeing models, LLMs that are really good at finding security vulnerabilities. So we're seeing this in the wild right now outside of Web3. LLMs are finding like bugs in like security software that's like 10 years old, like that runs on like every Linux kernel in the world. I think we just saw one this month that was disclosed, right? Like these sort of things. So like as new tools come into existence, what we've always seen in sort of the history of security in IT has been the bigger the organization, the slower they are to adopt to sort of new technologies and new threats. And nefarious, malicious people tend to adopt really fast because they're small and nimble. So if you have this great new tool, and let's pretend it's like Hack GPT. If you have this Hack GPT out there available, where anybody can just go and point it at a contract and say, hey, tell me what the security vulnerabilities are in this contract. And it's like, oh, look, you have a vulnerability here. Then they can run off and execute that. You're kind of in this like a democratization of security work, right? So for me, it was more like in my own flows, just like somebody who's outside of Web3 needs to be doing automated audits on their own code, right? Like pull requests, stuff like that. We started off this conversation talking about that. It should be the same for contracts. Like it doesn't replace an actual like certified audit, right? You still need those people. You need that flow, but like as you're working on something or as you're making changes to something, like this sort of agentic AI auditing should be happening because it's getting better and better. Like we even saw what was Anthropic calling their new, I forgot already what they're calling their new model. But
Mythos.
Yeah, Mythos, like, the scariness around that. We had 5.4, GPT 5.4 cyber. And then like, I think just this week we've seen GPT 5.5 cyber. And so like, it's moving very, very quickly. And people should be using it. I don't know if that answers your question.
What I found pretty interesting is we had Quid on like a few episodes ago, like 4 or 5 weeks ago, and we talked about this with Quid, and we always said like, if you're doing an audit as a company, basically it's just a stamp of approval right now. People want a certain audit from a certain company to have that stamp and say like, hey, it was audited by XYZ. But what I find very interesting, Justin, you just said this, was that usually you do an audit like, let's say today, end of April 2026, and then maybe you don't run an audit again for the next year or next 2 years. And with your workflow, it could be like an option to have a quarterly audit or whatever. Maybe not done by a security company, but even with an agent or something like that. Would that be something that's like imaginable?
Well, yeah, and it's not only when you're making changes to something new, it's also about applying the latest technology to what you've done in the past, right? So it's like, as the models get better and better and better, like we're not slowing down. Like it's going to get better and better. There's major contracts out today with vulnerabilities that nobody knows about, and there's models haven't figured it out maybe right now, but who knows? In 3 months, there's going to be GPT-6 cyber that's like finds just these really, really crazy attack vectors that we never thought of. So for me, it's more this idea of like, yes, I'll pay for the expensive audit for my protocol. I'll spend hundreds of thousands on it. I'll do all of that. But then like, what about in 6 months? So it's like, if you've got an automated workflow that's just constantly auditing, like every time a new model comes out, every time like sort of my agentic flow is like every time a new vulnerability is disclosed, take that vulnerability write up, and then you can apply that back to other things you've audited and be like, hey, agent, go apply this to all of these ones you've done in the past and see if it applies. And sometimes it'll pop up and it'll be like, oh yeah, this contract has the same vulnerability. And then you tell it, okay, work that into your knowledge, like put that into your sort of vulnerability database. So in the future, you also check against that, right? I think that's more what the approach should be for teams.
Nikita, question for you. Could this reduce like the low-hanging fruit that attackers do use a lot?
Yeah, I think one, it lets you go a lot broader. It lets you look for, you can even just ask such a simple question. Like, I think honestly, it creates more tickets in some ways because you can add a very broad question, ask a very broad question where, you know, you can say, hey, like, find me whatever's wrong with this repo, you know, and it will find something for you for sure. And then you need to have some sort of judge. The one is going to find things you had no idea were there and are definitely a problem. But then it's also going to find convincingly a lot of other things that look like a problem, but maybe are not necessarily a problem, or maybe a problem, but not urgent enough to do right at this second. And so you still need like somebody with security understanding to kind of like order them. It does help. It does help, but sometimes the prioritization, it might not know all the context of your organization or how the system looks like outside this code base. I think the more context, the more of these pieces of the system to analyze you can give it, the better your result will be. But it can also kind of maybe create more work sometimes than less. But overall, I think that's a good thing. I think it's good that somebody can come in and maybe without even a security background, come and ask like, hey, what are the security problems in this repo? Especially I think if you're trying out like open source stuff and you want to see if you want to add it into like your stack. I would even just ask that for like new projects I want to add. It's like, what if there's a vulnerability here I'm not even aware of and the maintainer is not aware of? That I think could be an interesting part of just the whole vulnerability scanning stack that, you know, if you're using like a socket or something similar. So yeah, but I do think it helps. Like for us, for example, like tons of bug fixes, like we find ahead of time and we have like PRs ready to fix them. Engineers still review them, but like the understanding is like a lot of the understanding is kind of like preset for you. You still have to do some of your own, but it speeds up the work for sure.
I'm just thinking about when releasing an unaudited contract basically will become like unethical in the space. I mean, it probably is right now, but like we know this, and we're going to talk about this like to wrap the episode in the last 10 minutes or so now. We talked about this a lot, that it becomes a race between AI on one side and the defenders on the other side. So you got to put up with what they are going to put up against you. And people that have like a product, that have like a protocol, they need to get their defenses up, and they need to be aware that, hey, there's probably somewhere on this earth, someone is trying to run an LLM against my protocol, smart contract, whatever, and trying to find vulnerabilities. And this will happen a lot more in the future, I guess. Justin, what's your take on that?
It is now, like it's automated. Like I know several people that aren't bad people, so I assume bad people also do this, that are literally auditing every single contract that's deployed. Like they have a framework running that's just every single time a contract's deployed, it audits it and tries to find vulnerabilities in it. And they're doing it. Some of them are teams, like chain teams, doing that to try to reach out to people building on their chain ahead of time, which is really cool. Like if you're running an L2, great, do your own self-auditing, and that way you can ping a team and be like, hey, you know, don't do this. Like we found this problem. I think that's really cool. Others are just people searching for bounties, which actually I had a question on. I don't know if I'm allowed to steer questions at all, but and yeah, so I think like,
go ahead,
yeah, I actually had a question for Nikita then. So do you think that like the bounties and rewards sort of ecosystem is lacking in crypto today? And do you think like companies could do a better job at that to protect against these sort of problems versus just in-house?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to a lot of like the bounty platforms as well, and I think the common problem they have is now it's basically they're just getting flooded with AI generated like bounty submissions, and then on the other side now they're like, well, the only way to deal with this volume is either allow this to only specific people, but then you're kind of like, well, you're only getting reports from a few trusted researchers, but then anybody new is essentially out of the game. um and or use AI yourself to review it, and then you're at the mercy of what it finds, right? So I think on both sides, that's I think the main complaint with bug bounty programs nowadays is just the spray and pray volume of reports being submitted, and they're written very convincingly, and figuring out if there is a real reproducibility here. I think honestly reproducibility is where the whole bug bounty process needs to improve. If you can create, maybe that's just a requirement now where you can like recreate the exact state, and if you don't submit like a state recreation, it's just you don't, your bug bounty is not even considered. But then for that you almost need like a some sort of standardized sandbox to do it in. I think there's a lot of infra that can go into that whole approach, because right now it's essentially whichever side has slightly better LLMs. Is it the people spamming the intake, or is it the people trying to AI scan the inputs? Because if the AI scanning the inputs is slightly better, then maybe you can filter it correctly. But if the AI submitting spam is better, then it's going to get paid out for things that aren't bugs. And so it's really a rough time for those people right now, from what I've heard, and that's like a major focus there. But I do think we should at least have, I do think that allow listing approach works to start, is at least know like, okay, if like, I don't know, Tay reaches out to you, or like Sam CC-Sun reaches out to you, like alarm bells, like pager duties going off, like look at this immediately type of thing. There's like, at the same time, like people do complain about like, oh, there's so much spam, but then like they'll get a report from somebody very legitimate, and then they've never even seen it. So it's like, I don't think people are doing enough, for sure. Like you it's not like a thing of just like throw up your hands. Like there are simple practical steps you can take, like just by filtering the reports coming in to certain people and be like, okay, this triggers an extra alert.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've kind of been on both sides of it. So having been in crypto a long time, like there's been a lot of reports that I've made, and I found that in the earlier days, there was higher bounties to be had. Like teams, especially protocols and stuff, were much more willing to pay out big bounties. And in the last like 3 years or so, I feel like a lot of that's really dried up, to the point where like, even when I discover something, it's like, do I even want to go through all the hoops to go after like this $5,000 bounty? And like, I think the only one I've had that's like decent in the last years has been like an OpenSea one, which was a really decent payout. But it's like, you find something that's worth probably tens of millions, especially in crypto, because if it's a provable, reproducible like drain, and you go look and there's like the bounty programs like, oh, like the high level's like 5,000, and it's like you got to jump through all these hoops, and you got to KYC, and you got to do all these things. I feel like from that perspective, there's not nearly enough done, because if I was even like morally like even on the line, if I wasn't just like a straight up like black hat, I would be thinking like, man, should I really just like report this, or should I just like go grab 5 or 10 million? So I think you're trying to encourage people to report it. But then on the other side, I also get it, because like at Aborian, we don't have a public bounty program, but like I get spammed all day long with like clearly like LLM automated like emails and Telegram messages, which are like, and they're all like written, like you said, they're written like professional. What we used to think of, it used to be you could look at a report and you could be like, oh, that's a professional, like I can tell. But now they all look that way. And it's like, you dig into them, you spend 30 minutes reading it, and it's like, oh, there's an API key in your front end. And it's like, oh, that's like part of Uniswap's library. And it's like, there's a specific node that it's supposed to be there. Like, and it's like, you wasted all this time going through it. So I guess I get both sides, but I just feel like if we can find a way to reward, I don't know if it's protocols doing it, chains, foundations, whatever, if we can find a way to fund research and people using LLMs for good, that could really hedge against some of the risk. But
yeah, I think just like 2 quick things on that is that one, I think like 5K is definitely ridiculous for a bug bounty. Nobody's gonna spend time on that, right? So like, I think there needs to be something where the bug bounties can kind of like scale with like TVL in some ways. If you have 10 mil TVL, you maybe have in the tens to hundreds of thousands on the bug bounty. That's like on at least like a critical, like in the I don't know what the exact percentage is there, but it needs to be a percentage that scales up with TVL. One kind of way to achieve this is there is there's the SEAL like safe harbor agreement. This is like allows, like the white hat hackers to go in and hack your protocol. And you're basically saying, hey, as long as you follow these certain steps, we're not going to sue you. We're not going to send you to jail. And, there's a certain, I think, payout that is like included in there or something like that. I forget if there's a specific percentage, but the main point is it does allow, I think the alternative when the bug bounty is not being the best way to like, or like, I don't know if the best, but the most clear way to show it's reproducible is to white hat hack, that it's definitely reproducible. And so, and I think like, if you're seeing that you're, I think it's a good practice for projects to adopt, because it basically means like, hey, like even if your bug bounty inbox is overwhelmed, legitimate white hat hackers can still rescue those funds, and then they can prove that that there is a bug through this way, and then they can return the funds, and they're not worried about going to jail.
Yep. That's good. I was just typing in the chat of our host that we're gonna be skipping the last topic because we're almost top of the hour. This was a very quick one. I think we need Justin back one more time soon enough to be talking a lot more. But I got one question that I wanna have answered from you guys, maybe, and maybe if someone's listening, wanna have them think about if they leave the space. And my question that arises when we're talking about all these things is basically, Nikita, Justin, Juan even, do you guys think that the defenders, they are thinking enough about these kind of defenses, and are they ready for being vulnerable at scale, basically? Because this is what's going to happen. Because if Justin can run an audit for $100 in tokens, attackers can just do the same for running potential exploits against that.
Yeah, I've seen someone bring this up. It's basically like, you need like a token budget as a security team now, basically, because it's like, if you spend $100 on scanning, you're going to find certain amount of bugs and be able to fix them. If you spend $1,000, it's literally proportional, to how much, token budget plus actually giving the LLM all the context it needs to actually analyze the parts of the code that are relevant. And sometimes multiple systems, how to crawl them in this. So I think there's still some products to be built around that. But overall, it's just like, well, maybe there's like some method where like, the contract has part of the fees go to a LLM token budget that then like self scans the contract for bugs or something like that. Cause it's like, if you're like, let's say you're like a new startup team, and all of a sudden, like, you ship this thing and you're, you're suddenly like, you just ship this and you're suddenly at like 500 million in TVL. Like, you just raised your seed. You have like 3 people working on this. What are you really like kind of supposed to do at that stage? Hopefully you are making some sort of fees, and that those fees you can put into it, or you can put part of your fundraise into it. But there needs to be some clear pathway there that as TVL rises, security spend rises, and that's not like computationally defined anywhere. That's just like something that people kind of think of, but that's pace at which they realize it that they should be spending there doesn't catch up with how quickly the TVL grows.
Justin, how about you? You have been advising like projects and stuff. Do you think these topics get talked about enough?
I agree with what Nikita is saying, that it should scale and there should be some sort of guide to that. I think, unfortunately, most projects think about it much later, right? Like, and it's just the nature of business, right? It's like you're trying to build something in the space. You're thinking, as a founder, you're thinking more about like growth, TVL, volume, marketing, all these things. And like, we all know in security, like it's always after the fact that people are like, oh my God, like why didn't I get the hardware wallet? Why didn't I listen to those 40 tweets I saw that warned me against this? It told me over and over to use Revoke Cache. Why didn't I do that? And then afterwards, people are like, really, really think about it, right? So that's individuals, and that's also most startups. I think it's actually the exception to the rule to find an early team that's like seriously thinking about security from the beginning. And most of it, sadly, I'll say, is like performative. It's like, yeah, we need an audit. And then like, I mean, how many times have I been in a conversation? It's like, what's the cheapest audit, right? Like, what's the cheapest audit we can get just to put the seal on the website? And that's the thought process, right? And I get it. You're trying to be fiduciary responsible. You're trying to be responsible with money and stuff like that. But like, yeah, I don't know. So yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with both Justin and Nikita here. One of the thoughts that I'm having is that a lot of projects actually build in an isolated way in terms of like, okay, you have your product, you have like your different providers for this specific product you're building, and then you think about marketing, you see, okay, which are the KOLs that I can use? I'm talking security, which are the different security needs that my project can have at this time? And usually startups don't have like one specific people that can manage this. Usually, well, we see it all the time. It's weird that we have like a CISO in a Web3 security company. I think that's maybe changing a little bit right now. But historically, there wasn't like a CISO, usually someone from marketing managing all the different things, or someone from the dev side of things also managing all the different smart contracts. So we need to, I think, to bring that awareness that this is something really, really important, because if they lose access, if they have like a big hack, their project, their growth that they have like stipulated, the lifetime value of the users that you have on your protocol, all of that goes to waste, because these things can basically decide if your company lives or if your company dies. So I think this is one of the main things that we need to bring more awareness. And right now, defenders are using AI, but not at the scale I think that the scammers are using this for their own reasons and for their own advantage.
It's gonna be a continuous topic for us, I guess. I want to be talking to someone that has security practices in their company. Maybe we can find someone to invite to the show and talk to them about why they did what they did, or why they didn't do something. Probably these people will not talk why they didn't do anything, but maybe we got some good role models that we can interview. Justin, thank you for the time. Nikita, Juan, thank you for the time. Was a great episode. Was flying by for me, at least. Hope we can catch up again, guys. See you soon. Have a great one, and bis zum nächsten Mal.
Thanks, Justin. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Cheers.
Bye bye.
Luego.